think we're live now. Oh, I don't know what happened, but we missed. Okay, now Meghan is here now.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. This has been such a journey to be here with you. I'm so pleased to have this space with these amazing women. We have passed through a lot together, and I think the four of us has been, experiencing or having specific journeys to get in here. So without taking some more time about this magical and special space to hear this three unique journeys and hopefully leave this room with something to think about, I would love to introduce each one of you, or if you may, probably they can start introducing themselves and telling us a little bit more about what brings you here, or this venture capital path, what happened before, and we can start the conversation from there. Thank you so much for everyone to be joining this space. You can use the comment space on the side. If you have questions, I will make sure to pass those questions to our panelists. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. Hopefully this can be helpful for all of us. And yeah, let's start. Anna, I don't know if you want to be the first one to tell us a little bit more about you and what's your journey. And yeah, I'll just give you the microphone.
Sure, very happy to do that. Damaris, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so happy to be here today, and also particularly happy to be given that it's you and Meghan and Patricia. I feel very special being here. So my name is Anna Raptis, and I am originally Australian, Greek, but I'm also Mexican. I have two beautiful Mexican children and a lovely Mexican husband. So I'm definitely see myself as multicultural and multi-ethnic. And so my journey in venture capital started because I'm very much a purpose-driven investor, and I wanted to be able to invest in the changes I wanted to see in the world. So I started as an angel investor, and then I saw this big space in the market. I saw all these amazing women starting up, gender lens funds in the US. Some call them gender lens funds, some don't call them gender lens, but, amazing women leaders in the US building funds, and saw that there are a lot of funds being started in Mexico, but not, many being led by women or with this focus on women. And so what really led me to start Amplifica was that Mexico was ranked 122 out of 156 countries by the World Economic Forum in terms of opportunities and participation for women in the economy. And so that kind of lit a fire under me, seeing that data. I mean, that data, that's this year's data, but last year's data was pretty similar. So I saw for me a role to really play a part in making that change and closing that gap, motivated by the fact that, really all of Mexico can do a lot better. All of LatAm can do better if we increase the opportunities and participation for women. So that's been something that's really, driven me, to take the plunge, moving from angel investor to fund manager, which, is in itself has been a challenging journey. But, the exciting part of it is the huge opportunities that we have here.
I think I did unmute myself before, but yeah, that's great, Anna. Thank you so much for sharing that. What would you say that is your secret sauce, or what is something unique from your whole journey that probably will bring a different perspective into what are you doing now with Amplifica?
Well, I think that one of my experiences is very important is, that I've been an investor in several other funds. And so I have that, perspective of what it's like to be an LP in funds and different experiences having worked or invested with different funds. As you know, I'm an investor in the 500 funds. And so, being a first-time fund manager is very challenging and it's very daunting. But when I go out there and I talk with my potential investors, what gives me confidence is that I'm not asking them to do anything different than what I've done in the past, right? So I, in the past, have invested myself in first-time fund managers because I believed in their mission and their vision, and I believed that they could execute. So I think that my experience as an investor working with other first-time fund managers really gives me, a different perspective, and it gives me a lot of understanding, what potential investors, might be looking for around, expectations, what they want to get out of this journey. So I think that most of the other, some of the others in this space may have done the same kind of thing, but I think it's a little bit different. I've been in this for a while now. I started doing this in 2013, and I know that you have to be really patient, and I know that it takes enormous commitment and energy. What I really love is I love working with the entrepreneurs, and it's part of what I do anyway in my life is I love connecting people. And when I'm talking to people, I'm always thinking about how can I help this person, connect them with someone else and add value, right? So it's something that just comes naturally to me anyway. So being able to do that as part of my work, I really love it, and I really genuinely love to see other people grow and develop. So I feel like by having a fund, it allows me to put my strengths and my passion into work, so that even though you're working all day or night, sometimes it's not really like work.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I can totally, feel your passion on that. And thank you so much for bringing so much to the Latin American ecosystem this past decade almost. That's amazing. Thank you, Anna. Also, Patricia, we would love to hear more about you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what have you done before? What is EWA doing now? The microphone is yours.
Thank you. Well, so happy to be here. Really, really excited to be here with you three girls and with everyone. And so my name is Patricia Sáenz. I'm founder and managing partner of EWA Capital. I'm married for 20 years, but I look young. So, and I have two kids. One is 12 and the other one is 10. I started here in 2004 as an angel investor. In 2016, I saw that it was a great opportunity in venture capital, as you know, like internet access, smart mobiles was access in Latin America. So I joined the first fund here in Colombia that it was Mountain Nazca, Colombia. And as a passionate about entrepreneurship, I ended up being the managing partner of the fund. So I was from investor to become a managing partner, which is something unique. We started, it was first time fund manager. It was I believe also an entrepreneur ourselves, because this industry is so young that when I started fundraising, the people didn't even understand what I was doing. So everyone was like, but what are you going to do? But you never did this before. Yes, of course, you were working in a family office, but not a fund manager. So it was a whole challenge, an amazing, amazing experience. And then in 2019, we started our second fund. We changed our name to EWA Capital, which means seed in Arahuaco, which is from an Indian language here in Colombia. And we started, and I was thinking about okay, what would you do different from the first fund that we have been very successful so far? But at the end of the day, what would I do different? And what I decided was the gender lens approach was something that we wanted to do. We and as all the three of us realized that there were not many women as general partners, as decision makers in the GPs. So that was something unique about ourselves. And instead of, claiming that we don't get that much attention, I was like, that would be our, like el caballito de batalla, which means like, something like different. And that's something that we have to take advantage for. And then the second part would be like as a GP, and then to have a gender lens in our investment thesis. And the third part, I was like, okay, and we have to bring also investors, women investors. So we created this unique fund that we are very much, hopefully, close to close, the first closing. And something that we enjoy very much is like, well, most like Anna says, like, I believe like entrepreneurship is like, the road to follow for the successful of the economy in the region. I believe in education, absolutely. Like, it's something that we have to create, and through entrepreneurship is something that every day you do. So, that's basically what I have been doing in the past couple of years.
Just a couple, nothing much, nothing really significant. No, that's amazing. And actually, I think I was like getting into this venture capital world where, like, while the Mountain Nazca to Ewa Capital change was happening, and it was amazing to see all those small but impactful changes that you were bringing to the table. And for me, that was very inspiring. But before, starting this conversation that I'm sure it can go for hours, I will love to hear about you, Meghan. What has been your journey, what you are doing now, and what's your unique perspective on venture capital in this region? Specifically, we're talking about LatAm for anyone that is kind of lost. This is a female investors in LatAm panel. So welcome.
Thank you, Damaris. And I'll just say again, if my connection goes out, tell me and I'll switch Wi-Fi's. I keep getting a message saying that my network is not stable. So I guess that's what happens. I'm talking to you from Lima, which is where I'm based, Lima, Peru, although my accent gives away that I am originally from the US. I'm from Philadelphia, and I think that I've only met like one or two other people who have come to VC sort of along the way that I did, which is that I started out working in nonprofit. I studied international relations. I was sure I was going to go work at the State Department. I did a master's in human rights, moved to San Francisco to work for a human rights organization. And I think when you go to San Francisco, no matter what your best laid plans are, it's almost impossible to not sort of like feel that excitement of entrepreneurship and investing. And because I think of my background, and I think this is one of the things that is sort of like my special sauce, I guess, as you put it. I have a tendency to look around and sort of say, well, like, who's not in the room? Because that's something that in general within the human rights profession, within philanthropy, we're accustomed to doing. And so I was looking around. I'm in San Francisco. I mean, like, you go south of 24th and Mission, and like everyone's speaking Spanish. And yet I didn't see very many people within the startup sphere or the investment sphere who were speaking Spanish. And so I kind of just started asking myself why, and what could I do to change that? And so I started building networks with people. Actually, who I spoke with was Santiago from 500 Mexico about, because we realized we shared this very similar goal of like, how can we use our connections in Silicon Valley to help to build bridges between Latin America and Silicon Valley, and just like open up other opportunities for Latin American startups and entrepreneurs. So through that path, I ended up meeting a Peruvian American investor who had, he's indigenous Peruvian. His first language was Spanish, but at 6 years old, he moved to the US, speaking no English. And in spite of that has, managed to, very much, I know they say like the American dream is dead. I don't know, like he very much was able to, take advantage of that. It was also a different time, and built a career in financial services. And we met at TechCrunch Disrupt, realized that we shared this passion for investing in underrepresented founders in sort of like underserved markets, and that he had this passion and interest giving back to Peru, and was starting to think about investing in Peruvian startups as a way of doing that. And we took a trip to Lima. That was January 2018 to sort of see like what was the ecosystem like, and we were sold. And like the first investment was a few months later, and now Inca Ventures is it's a fintech focused fund that invests in the Andean region, and we have, I'd say, like a special interest in investing in founders that don't fit the mold of sort of like your prototypical founder.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Meghan. Also, connecting this on, people, founders, investors that don't fit the mold. We're 4 females in a very, male-dominated ecosystem, especially for Latin America. It is challenging to fundraise everywhere in the world. For Latin America, it has their special, characteristics, I would say. Rather than just like focus on what is to be a female investor on the region, I wanted to ask you a different question that actually Anna proposed, and it's very interesting. But why do we see so few female fund managers, female decision makers? What do you think, personally, or representing your firm, that this is a constant? This is something that we haven't been able to change, and we're like just 4 of a few people that may have female that may have this space, to raise their voice. So what do you think? Why is this something that haven't been changed?
Can I go?
Yeah, sure, please.
So I think like it happens all around. It happens in the investment side. It happens in the entrepreneur side. So from my point of view, it's basically about empowerment, leadership, and education. And I would summarize like that because at the end of the day, and this happened worldwide. It's not Latin America, as you mentioned, it's worldwide. If you see everyone goes, well, most of that goes to university, they have great grades, they graduated from best universities, and they start as very successful careers at the beginning, But in the third level, we see a lot of people, 50-50 more or less, women and men. But when you start like going up, is when you start to see that less women start to raise. And I think like one of the reasons for that, it's basically education, because as I mentioned before, it's like the part that I think they put us in a chip, especially in Latin America, that is like a ship, like the family is your responsibility, the kids are your responsibility, everything is your responsibility. And at the end of the day, you have to take that chip out, because a family is 50-50 responsibility, and it's not just the kids, it's your responsibility. And if you want to be a successful, investor or entrepreneur or whatever, at the end of the day, it's like you have to have a balance between your family and your job. And that's something that came into your mind. I remember when I started, and my father, when I used to go and travel around the world, and he was always asking me like, is it really necessary that you have to go there? Because, you have 2 kids and you have to pay attention to your family and you shouldn't go there. And you were always like, punishing yourself about like, should I be here? Is it really necessary? And it's a question that no one makes to a man. If he has to travel, he just pick up the suitcases and he goes for travel for work, So I think that that's the part that I believe like it's our leadership, and that we have to change the mind of the husband or your partner, and in the family, and also in the mindset of the girls. For example, in your kids, yes, of course we want to have kids, or I don't know if you want to or not, but But at the end of the day, it's not a limitation if you have a family to be successful and to make up your dreams. So I really think that that's the part of the empowerment, education, and leadership that we have to change in the region and worldwide.
That is absolutely, I think that's very accurate. But also I'm starting, like mixing questions, because that's how this goes. But it's kind of challenging when you lead systematically, right? Because as we were discussing before, there are times in which we can start to focus on matters that we can change from our platforms. But when things as gender-based violence, as we see a very recent case not so long ago in our own ecosystem, then I don't know if the conversation starts to evolve into something that is kind of bigger than us, if I can say that properly. But I don't know, Anna, Meghan, what do you think about this?
Well, if I could go back to the comment that Patricia made, I would echo what she said, and it's very much about representation. But just as Patricia said, we don't have to conform and, follow that same path. I really believe that you can't be what you can't see. And my experience, seeing all of these, strong female leaders, serious fund managers in the US, they are the people that have inspired me. When we talk about the lack of participation of women investing, it's because a lot of women really haven't thought about it necessarily before. They haven't thought about the importance of it. And you can see the studies that UBS made, and they break down investment decision making through gender. And one of these statistics that they talk about is that 61% of millennial women delegate their financial decision making to their husbands, right? But if you add to that a lot of women actually delegate not only to their husbands, but to their fathers, to their brothers, to their grandfather, to their financial advisor, who's a man. So basically 90% of the decision making is being, delegated to men. And that comes back to some of the points that Patricia made around, it's around education, but it's a lot around social, cultural biases. And as women, we need to kind of take the reins back and understand that, we don't delegate our political decision making. We shouldn't be delegating our financial decision making because, the lack of representation of women and the views and the voices and the values of women is really having a negative impact on our world today and tomorrow. So, yes, there's systemic bias. Yes, we can't blame women for the situation we are in today, but it is time to take our power back and take charge of it and make the changes. If we want to have a different world, we need to use our economic power and put our money where our mouth is and invest in the kind of companies we want to see. If we want to see more women leaders, we need to direct our money to more women founders. We are in control of our own destiny to an extent, so we need to take that power and use it.
Yeah, I agree with all the things that Patricia and Anna have said so far regarding our own. I'm going to take a slightly different stance, which is more looking at sort of what are the structures. And I think that this is just a gender issue, but to marginalized populations, which is the aspect of security, financial security, and the need for financial independence. I, for one, my mom made it very clear to me from a very early age because she left my dad when I was 5. She raised me on her own for the most part, and I wasn't like necessarily aware of the financial hardship that caused her. But as an adult, we've had a number of conversations about it. And she made it very clear to me, like, you need to make sure that you are financially independent. And I think that is, that can lead people to have a different assessment of risk. And entering into venture capital, becoming an entrepreneur, it is a business. And it requires a certain amount of, sort of a lack of risk aversion, but also in many times it requires a certain amount of capital, of stability, financial stability. Because, Patricia was just talking about how they decided to switch from Mountain Nazca to AWA in 2019. I remember we first met at SOCAP in 2019. And I remember her presentation and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Gender Lens fund in Latin America, in Colombia. I'd only ever heard about funds in Mexico and Brazil. And she's saying they're just about to hopefully have their first close this year. And that's the reality for a lot of funds. That's not just for female led funds, right? Like it can take 2 years to raise a fund or more, depending on the size. And I remember hearing, I think it was one of the founding partners of All VP also talking about that experience of like how they decided, okay, well, we'll have this like job that pays the bills, and we won't take any management fees for the first like small fund. And those are the kinds of decisions that have to be made, or up to now have had to be made in order to raise a fund and be a fund manager. I think that if we want to see more diversity in our fund managers, we have to rethink those structures. And that is not something that we can do on our own, just as GPs. That is something that the LPs, those investors that are investing into our funds, also have to do. And so, for example, First Close Partners in the US, they are very aware of this, and they're very aware of some of the structural impediments to people starting funds. And so they have conversations with their fund managers around, okay, so maybe we like front end the management fees, and then it's sort of like there's a trickle down as far as how later end of the fund, because we understand that to get started you're going to need more capital, and you don't necessarily have that yourself. Let's discuss how to do this, because there's a phenomenon of a GP commit, right? Like it's kind of standard that general partners will commit at least 1% of the fund, and for a $5 million fund that's $50,000. That just keeps going up, right? And not everyone has that money. So I think that I'm totally one of like, let's do everything that like we ourselves can do. I also think that it's really important that we think about like, what are the structural things that need to change for there to be more women and people of color as fund managers?
No, definitely. And I think these structural changes are kind of out of our hands, right? But in order to make this more visible, we also need to gather data. And Anna wouldn't let me lie. Data is something that is still missing a lot in our region. So I would love to hear, this half an hour that already passed so fast, and has been a lot of fun, obviously. We have been focused on what can we do, what is our journey, what we can change. Also, this, question mark on when the structures are going to make easier for different people to reach these kind of opportunities to make a change, right? But also, thinking on what is the goal for all of us here to see more diversity, on our startups ecosystems and like that, we have to see to the deal flow, right? And so many people for so many years have said that there's not enough deal flow for female entrepreneurs, especially in STEM, especially in Latin America, right? So it's like a 3-layer issue, right? So on the last study that Endeavor did related to diversity on the female entrepreneurs, specifically for STEM, 8 of 10 female entrepreneurs have faced some kind of trouble, issue, harassment, or something related to that through their fundraising process. So, I mean, I think it's important to talk as well of the challenges of female entrepreneurs on our region, the ones that are in our portfolio, the ones that haven't reached to that level because they are lacking or they cannot connect to these systems that will help them to thrive and to reach to our, doors. So I would love to hear what you have say out there. What do you want to say about that? Or if you have a statement, that would be helpful as well.
Sure. I just, you referenced earlier, that there was a very unfortunate case that came to light just in the last few weeks that really rocked, not just Peru and Brazil, where the entrepreneurs were from, but across Latin America, which is rare for something to sort of like make its way from Mexico all the way down to Brazil, given that there is the... And, according to the World Health Organization, 1 in 3 women will experience some harassment in their lifetime, most likely from their partner. I think that, as you just said, and we've seen a couple of just, personal polls or whatever in the recent weeks, whereby that statistic is a lot higher in many of our countries. And it's unacceptable. And when it comes to the entrepreneurs, I think that we as investors also have a role to play in making clear that we will not invest in male founders, for example, who have abused their female co-founders or partners, or that is not, I don't care if it's in or outside of the workplace, technically speaking, because if that's the type of person you are, then it's highly likely that will also make its way into the workplace. And that is not the kind of behavior that we should be rewarding with millions of dollars in investment. As far as what we can do about it, I'm not sure I have a solution for that, but I will just say that, I myself have also experienced that, not in Latin America, not in this sector, but I and most of my friends also have stories, right? I think that many women, sadly, the 1 in 3 number to me actually seems very low, because I'd say that the instances that I can count amongst my female friends are much higher than that.
I guess I would just add that, we do see some very poor behaviour, and there are systemic biases, and I think we can do something about it. And I really believe, that we all have the power to influence, and at an individual level, by being very clear about what our expectations are. And in terms of how do we change the situation? It is through having more diverse fund managers. It's having more women fund managers. It's having other unrepresented groups as fund managers. And how do they get there? Well, we need also to see not just individuals, but family offices and institutional investors designing instruments that will encourage and develop diverse fund managers. Now, I haven't seen that so far, and I really question sometimes the role of institutional investors. Are they really doing enough to foster diversity in fund managers? And I would say clearly no. And what I've seen, in my own experience as a fund manager, developing fund, we've had enormous support from individuals in Mexico who say, we agree with what you're doing. We think it's really, really important. We want to invest in this. But it's been much harder to reach institutional investors, BFIs, family offices, because they have a different way of assessing and they have, different ways of investing. And I were recently in a gender investing event, and there was a lot of frustration expressed by institutions saying, we want to support female investors, we want to support first-time fund managers, we want to support, diverse fund managers. We don't know how to do it. It's not that hard. Just start writing the checks. That's what I would invite you to do. If you want to see change, start writing the checks. It's not that hard, and most of these institutional investors can really take on a lot more risk given their wealth than what individuals are doing at the moment. So, I do believe there's ability to make change, and I don't think it's as hard as a lot of what a lot of investors are saying. It's not that hard just to go and write a check.
And also, it's a matter of walk the walk, right? It's not just to leaving everything on nice intentions. And it will be great to have this and have that. Sorry, Patricia.
I think it's changing a little bit. For example, I have seen changes, like they are a little bit more responsible, and we have to mention that because they have been like a little bit changed, not as fast as we would like to, and that's absolutely right. And writing the check, as Anna mentioned, I think is the starting. And it's the way to do it, Other thing that I believe is like this was cultural. And it's cultural. It's the way that, I don't know, but I studied here in Colombia, and many things happened while I was at school that probably at that moment we laugh about it. And if I see it right now, you would be like, oh, that's not nice. You know what I mean? So I think like it was cultural to do it, and it's the moment to raise your voice and say like, hey, it's not good to do that, and to start the change and to start the woman to talk about it and to say that it's not fine, for example. And when you are like, and even happens to us, as Anna was mentioning, that it happened, for example, when you are raising money and someone one day asked me, do you think if you were flirting a little bit more with the guys, you would raise more money? And I was thinking like, definitely. I believe so. Yes, absolutely. And it shouldn't be, and some guys, they sometimes make like the improper things like, hey, why don't we go out and then we will discuss or whatever other things. So what I believe is like the people used to do it, and they probably, I don't know if they did it in the wrong way or they were just like, hi, flattering is so funny here in Latin America. And now it's like when you said like, hey, that's not funny because it's my job. So it's not funny about my job. It's funny when we're flirting and we're in the bar together. That's fine, but not when I'm raising the fund. So what I try to say is like, probably it was cultural. It was fine a few years ago, and we are right now aware about the situation. And it's the moment when someone is doing that, it's okay to say, hey, I don't like it. And it starts by us saying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, can I just add one? I just want to emphasize what both Anna and Patricia said about like just write the check. I think that we get a lot of pushback because many of these organizations manage very large funds, right?
Yeah.
And it can be difficult, when you're managing like tens of billions of dollars, like $1 million check, because the level of diligence or whatever, like all your structures. But like to the point of walking the walk, if you really want to invest in emerging fund managers or first-time fund managers, and you really want to see diversity in those fund managers, then set up a slightly smaller entity that has fewer strings attached, that can much more easily, with much less diligence, write that $1 million check, as opposed to requiring a minimum of $100 million check. It might take a little bit of work to set up, but I guarantee that the impact will be outsized to the work that was spent in setting it up.
No, definitely. Also, $1 million in Latin America is still a lot of money. So wouldn't be, that little work to do or so. Yeah, no, totally agree with the trio of you. It's I mean, there's a lot to do still. We still have a lot of things to do. And just to start, wrapping up all this, we have been talking a lot about gender, but there is so much more that we will have to do in order to see diversity, not only gender-based, right? So what's next? Because whenever this, gender balance we're reaching, or whenever on next generations we can reach that level, and then we will have open talks about how bad it was in the past. But what's next? What is diversity really for our very rich ecosystem? Or what is the actions that you're planning to do after we left this problem behind, right? Because we will definitely. But what is diversity? How does diversity looks on the future for you?
Look, I mean, we've got a long way to go. We're only just skimming the surface. We're just talking about gender today, but diversity in all senses of the word. We're looking for inclusion. We're looking for people of all different natures, from all different socioeconomic groups, of all different sexual preferences, of all different colours. So we've got a long, long way to go. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here for, other actors to come in and help sponsor. And I really look to the US for a lot of leadership in that space, because I've seen funds, doing great things, getting interns from all different kinds of backgrounds, every day, I think about these challenges that we have and, try and make my little tiny bit of difference. I realise that there are big conversations out there that are starting to happen through initiatives like what we're doing today, through the amazing work that, 500 is doing, that Patricia's doing, that Meghan's doing. And so, we're doing little steps at a time. And I hope at some stage, we can be accelerating that change to really have a more diverse and inclusive ecosystem, because it benefits everyone.
Also, I think that's super important. It benefits everyone. Why aren't we doing this already, right?
Well, from my point of view is that it's a very young industry, as I mentioned before. And as Anna was mentioning, like if you think about it, venture capital 5 years ago in Latin America, as I mentioned, no one even understood what I was talking about, at least here in Colombia and in Peru. I remember that I went to an event in Peru in 2000, I think it was 15 or 16, and it was nothing there. I mean, I'm impressed about everything that has happened in Peru in just 3 years. So what I tried to say is, like, it's going and it's growing very fast, but we cannot forget it's a young thing. That, of course, we are just taking and starting to do the gender, and we have to go in the whole ESG, the whole thing as a part. And I believe, like, everything is coming more and it's growing very fast. So what we have to do is, like, gender is just a small part, and we will have to change our thesis and be more aware about what we want to have in the startups very, very fast and move as the world is moving.
I think that Patricia makes a really good point about our theses, right? Just 2 weeks ago now, we co-hosted the first specific diversity, equity, inclusion event in BC for Latin America, called the Diversity Dividend. And one of the takeaways from, say, 2 of the panels that we had was really focused on, and this came from Ricardo Villadiego, who's the founder of Lumu. He's an Afro-Colombian founder based in Miami, and they just received funding from SoftBank's Miami Fund. And also then this was also a comment that was made by Shu, who's managing that fund. And the 2 of them separately, completely uncoordinated, essentially were like, look, we need to have a diversity lens. And Shu's point was, there's this concept, and I loved it. So, and I know Shu was, or either spoke earlier today or is speaking tomorrow. I can't remember, but so I apologize for stealing this concept from him, but I just really loved it. He talked about generating alpha, which is a concept more in the listed securities side of things. But really, it's the idea that, like, in order to generate outsized returns, we have to go against the grain. And that in general, venture capital, the tech sector, entrepreneurship, it's been about that from the beginning. Like when venture capital first was conceived as this idea of investing in very early stage private companies in what would become Silicon Valley, it was very unpopular. And so in order for us to continue to generate those outsized returns, we have to be looking for where is that next sort of like currently unpopular outlier space. And seeing that like the majority of sort of the prototypical founder these days is often described as being like a straight white man, non-disabled, maybe a college dropout, or having gone to, the Crunchbase report came out a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was like over 430 of the founders who raised $1 million or more in 2020 had all graduated from Stanford. Now that's data for the US, but unfortunately, at least anecdotally, I think that all of us on this panel would agree that is very similar in Latin America. And so we need to start changing that. We need to start being intentional about it, because it's, sorry, we lost Damaris. I think her laptop broke. But to sort of like continue the thought while we troubleshoot in the background, I think part of what can help, and so that's actually something that through an initiative that I've started with a couple of other investors and with the support of others in our ecosystem, including Anna and Santiago from 500 Startups, called InclusiveX. Like that's what we're aiming to do, is we're aiming to do a survey, do a study on diversity in the Latin American VC sector to understand where are we, so that we know and can measure how to get to where we want to go. Like, because without the data, we're basically steering a ship without navigation, right? And so I think that, I would just say, like, have a diversity lens, be purposeful about it. Yeah, it takes time and energy, because if these are marginalized communities, they may not trust us at a first approach. It may take time to gain their trust, for them to even want to take our money. Especially I think in Latin America, when if we're looking to invest in, let's say, like indigenous founders or Afro-descendant founders, who have really been doing alternative types of financing for their entrepreneurial endeavors. So
adding
a
little bit on that, while Damaris managed to work on the laptop, I think like having different proposals would be nice. For example, here in Colombia, Andrés Gutiérrez from Te Paga, who is an amazing startup here in Colombia, he and another people started to go to different regions where there is nothing, like nothing. I don't even will mention the name of the regions, because it's like, Afro-American over there, that is in Tumaco, that it's in the middle of nowhere, or in another regions, and what they are trying to come. And I think it was a great initiative backed by the corporates. For example, right now from Huila, it's like they started to create a competition that probably those startups are not really investable at this moment, but it's nice to go there and to see what they are doing. Then we as mentors, we can help them. And then what it has impressive is like the corporates from those regions, or the families, the family office from those regions, they are helping there. So those are the other ways that we believe, like besides of gender lens that we were talking about, is like going to another regions, to another cultures. It's not basically to be measuring, in our case, Bogota, Medellin, Mexico, like as the main cities. It's more like, okay, let's try to move all around right now. And welcome back.
Yes. Yes.
I'm so sorry. This didn't happen on the essay. I don't know. My laptop just shut down, but I'm back. I'm happy to be back. What were you saying? Sorry.
We were just talking about different initiatives that we could be doing to diversify the sector. Yeah, and I totally agree with what Patricia was saying about going to really going to the communities, right? And rather than sort of waiting for them to come to us.
No, definitely.
That's a really good
also,
point,
I do believe that.
No, I was going to say, I think that's a very good point, Megan. That does require, access. It requires, as you said, developing relationships over long periods of time. It requires money, right? And so, when it goes back to, the point that we're making earlier, that, first-time fund managers, emerging fund managers, can have difficulty having access to the necessary resources to build out these kind of programs. So that's when, we're looking for some kinds of sponsorship, technical assistance, partnership, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity for that.
Yeah, also, I do believe in the point that you mentioned earlier, and you cannot be something you cannot see. So having, these leadership roles and these role models for girls that are getting into university, and probably something related to venture capital doesn't sound like appealing or something that they can thrive. Getting closer to communities as we invest, as Mujeres Invirtiendo, we exchange, and some other initiatives that they want to push this idea to the youngest generations. I think that is also fundamental for this purpose.
Yeah, and I would add Global Black Youth to that list, and also Manos Unidos in Colombia.
Absolutely.
Any other one that we're missing?
I guess just because I mentioned this at the beginning of who's not in the room, I do think it's worth noting that two of us on this panel are not originally from the region. And I think that does not preclude Anna and I from doing the work that we're doing. Obviously, we care deeply about the region, and that's why we're doing this work. I also think that it's important to just remember that there's possibly a bit of privilege, right, that comes from coming from outside to coming into the region. And I think that, for example, that's one of the reasons why, and I've discussed this with some of my Peruvian counterparts, also female counterparts, that I have not really felt the sort of misogyny within the sector. But I think, and I've spoken to them about it, and we've kind of agreed that's probably because I'm American, that kind of trumps the being woman in this case, in that in the type of respect that they give me. So I just think that's worth noting, and also all the important work that's being done by everyone here.
No, definitely. And related to the last question that I was able to do before everything just shut down. We still have to add all those different characteristics and variations that we can just bring to the conversation to really build a diverse entrepreneurial and investment ecosystem in the region. And if we start adding, clauses and different characteristics around that, probably we will never reach a status in which we feel we have done enough, right? So in terms of that, like being like breaking the barrier that is above us technically, because we are women in this very male-dominated ecosystem, but also being Latinas, but also, you know, like adding all those layers of complexity. I think, I mean, as I said, there's still a lot of things to do. Sorry, but I mean that is a very fair point, Meghan, and I do believe that we have a lot still to work on that. Right? We can start having more diverse panels.
Yeah, well, and it's a continuous process, right? Like I think as Dr. Kendi makes it, the point Dr. Kendi makes in How to Be an Anti-Racist is that this is a constant decision that we make every day. And so, yeah, like we probably won't ever be like satisfied. And I actually think that if we were to become satisfied with a change, that would mean that we're being complacent. So I think it's good that we just keep pushing and challenging ourselves in that way.
That is amazing.
Yeah, adding a little bit, if I may. I believe one thing, like it's the correct moment. You know, we're at the perfect time, so we should take advantage of that. And beside of that, it's like, you know, what I mentioned at the beginning, you can be like, oh, it's very tough to, you know, to be a woman and to be an entrepreneur, to raise money. Or instead of that is like, wow, I am different from the whole funds or the whole startups that are managed by men. And that's absolutely the difference. And it's the correct moment. So take advantage about that. And I think like that's the right way to do and to look at it.
Yeah, totally agree on that. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time and your disposition to take this space. Hopefully everyone in the room can just leave this at least thinking how they can make a small difference from their own platform, which I think was the purpose for the four of us. And nothing, this has been great. Hopefully we can like come back next year with a more positive outcome and a different perspective, and just to be the change we want to see in the world. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.